Welcome to another evening at the pen with some fantastic writers. My name is Patrick, and I am the science fiction fantasy selector here at the Poison Pen. And I have got the man, the legend himself, Kevin Hearne, here for his latest book, Paper and Blood. I don't know if it's backwards where you guys are seeing it, but where I'm looking at the camera, everything's backwards. Kevin, welcome. Congratulations.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It's always good to meet Poison Pen. Yeah, hometown.
Well, we're your old stomping grounds. I know that we're not so much anymore, and you've gotten the chance to visit some pretty cool bookshops around the country, but it sounds like you've kept pretty much to the indies.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have, other than the Pen, which I know we're the best, do you happen to have any favorite bookstores around the country?
Oh, yeah, there's great ones all over the place. Mysterious Galaxy, of course, in San Diego. Murder by the Book in Houston. I like Doylestown Books in Pennsylvania. They're pretty fun. Have some good events there. Fountain Books in Richmond, Virginia. Malaprops in Asheville, North Carolina. There's a ton of great places all around the place. So I'll hope to get to some more eventually.
Exactly. Especially, you need to get to Australia now.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you written about Australia and you just haven't gone? I mean, it seems like 2020 just wasn't anybody's year. And unfortunately, I think it put some kibosh on some of your plans.
Yeah, it did. I fully planned to go and research Paper and Blood in person. I had plane tickets and all kinds of reservations, through for New Zealand, Tasmania, and Australia. I was making plans for all kinds of little tours of, different things that I needed to see, hiking trips, etc. And then, of course, 2020 happened. And I was supposed to, go in April and everything shut down. So, but I still had to write the book. So I had to figure out, I'm really into making sure that my locations are real, that people can visit them if they wanted to, or if they're from the area, they will recognize it and say, oh, he got that right. So that is kind of my jam. I love that part. But if I couldn't go there, Google Maps is wonderful. It's an amazing tool, but it leaves stuff out. Like, how do things sound and smell when you're standing there? What's the ambient noise like? What are you going, do you have to be aware of kangaroos, whatever. So I had to get a hold of a couple of friends. Amy Kaufman is a wonderful author, New York Times bestseller in her own right, many times over. And she is a fantastic person who lent herself her expertise and time to actually take still photos and video for me of the places that I wish to go. So I am deeply grateful to her for all that she did for me here. And what she wound up doing is actually taking a hike in the bush where I needed to go, and showed me that, okay, this is what it looks like around here. These are the trees that are in this area. You don't want to walk over there because that's where the brown snakes are and they'll kill you. So, stuff like that. It was fantastic. She even went around Melbourne for me when they were in lockdown. She got an exception for it. You could leave your house for work, and then you were allowed to do 1 hour of exercise, like from your workplace. So she was able to go into Melbourne. She was actually signing books in a building, and she was able to then take a walk around Melbourne downtown for me as part of her exercise for, during lockdown. So that was really cool.
That is really cool. And I've heard from other podcasters that are Australian how incredible of a lockdown Australia really went under. And so that's pretty cool that she was able to get around and to do that. And I bet that did it give you any anxiety or anything like that, knowing that you were focusing your book around Australia? This is where it's going to be happening. This is the main location, and not be able to do as much research as you would like, because I know you like to travel where you go.
Yeah,
as much as possible.
Yeah, I went to Glasgow for the research for Ink Sigil. And so all those places are real too. And of course, I used some of my research for that for the beginning of Paper and Blood as well. But and then I have a Glaswegian native who now lives in Canada who helps me out a lot with the Scots language and so on. But Amy basically took a huge load off my shoulders. There's a suburb of Melbourne called Glen Waverley that I also needed information on. And another author, a YA author named Nicole Hayes, went and got me some video of that. And that was super cool. And especially because when they're narrating the videos, you get this really charming Australian accent, doing the whole thing. So I loved it. It was not ideal in the sense that I meant to go myself, but certainly a fantastic, substitute for me being there myself. Yeah, because they're both writers. They knew what I needed to know. This is what it smells like here. This is what you hear, because of course audio is not always great if you're doing it on your phone. So yeah, it was really good.
Well, you have such a good reputation among the writing world. I mean, everybody that I talk to, if we mention Kevin Hearne and they've met you in person, they talk about what a good guy you are. As actually, Jen McKinley was here signing books, and she was bemoaning the fact that you're no longer here in Phoenix because she's like, I miss my writing buddy. And you and Jen write completely different books. She does funny traditional mysteries and romance, and you're doing fantasy for the most part, high fantasy novels. Mm-hmm. I do want to by the way, for the Facebook audience, feel free to write your questions in. As Kevin and I talk, I definitely recommend doing that just so we can get your questions answered. As much as Kevin would rather be here taking your questions as much live as possible, we can do that way. So first of all, your mom says hi.
Oh,
so
cool.
That's the most important person to get out there.
Yeah,
right
there. Here's the thing, just so everybody knows, I can't see the questions. Patrick is the one who sees them and then just, kind of is going to read them to me. So I hope you don't feel like if you're asking a question, I hope you don't think I'm ignoring you, because I honestly can't see anything except Patrick. So I would also like to do a shout out, if they're here on the live stream, to Stacy, Cheryl, and Danielle in Huntsville, Alabama. There's a chapter in Paper and Blood called the Alabama Troll Slayer that is basically written with them in mind and their amusement in mind. So I hope they enjoy that. They've been longtime readers, and we hang out whenever I go to Huntsville. And there you go. It's I hope they're around and they're enjoying that chapter, because it was a blast to write.
Well, Maggie says that she's from Australia. She's watching us today. Maggie Galbraith, maybe you know her?
I've seen the name around, but hi, Maggie.
So she really wants to know how you got all the information into ink making and sigil making, and is that a hobby that you're particularly interested in?
I love fountain pens and the various inks, and I did do some research on ink making, but I didn't really make any myself because I sort of feared the process that it goes through. There used to be laws that you had to make ink outside of the city walls because it was so explosive. They were boiling linseed oil as a fixative, and when you're boiling that stuff, it's incredibly flammable and unpredictable, and it could sort of kind of go up on you really quickly. Entire buildings and city blocks used to be burnt down in printmaking areas until they figured out, you guys should do that ink making outside, and on a day when it's not windy. That you have to make sure that the conditions are perfect for doing what you need. So I never got into that myself. I didn't want to, me and flammable stuff, we don't go well together. So, but I just like to use the amazing ink products that are offered by fountain pen folks out there. And I love to write letters, and I just thought, wouldn't it be cool? It seems magical sometimes what you can do with a fountain pen. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could actually do magic with it? And,
when you buy the book, the next best thing that we could do here, because you're so far away at the moment, is you did these really lovely, it looks like you used a fountain pen to sign hundreds of these for us. And it was so nice of you to do that. thank you for doing that, by the way. And Kevin's signature, I've got to say, to everybody out there, is amazing. After so many books and so many signed things that you've done, it is still legible.
Yeah.
Got some authors we really love. One of them happens to live not too far from Phoenix and comes out for every book. And I swear his signature looks like Jesus.
Oh yeah.
It's just the way he loops it and all that good stuff, you know, and you're like, is that, who is that? What is it? But it looks like Jesus, you know? So we always joke about that. So in terms of Paper and Blood, you basically start off right where Ink and Sigil ends.
Yeah, it's like a couple of months afterward. And there's been a little bit of time that has passed, and there's also at the beginning of the book, a little refresher on what happened in Ink and Sigil. And then we kind of get into it, and Al is really worried about the curse on his head, and he wants to get working on that because it might fall on his hobgoblin too. So he's got to get working on that. But then there's a call from Australia, somebody needs help. There's another sigil agent in trouble. Turns out two of them are actually in trouble. And then once he gets down there to try to figure out what's going on, he runs into the Iron Druid. Atticus and Oberon return, and Starbuck, the Boston Terrier. So they all show up, and then it's kind of a grand adventure with all of these characters from both the Ink and Sigil and the Iron Druid Chronicles. It's a lot of fun.
Was it good kind of coming home a little bit, bringing the Iron Druid back in? Because I mean, you lived with him for so many years, and then pulling yourself away. I mean, you did the Seven Kenning series, or at least the first book. We're waiting for the second book, Kevin.
Oh, the second book's out.
Is it Seven Kennings?
Yeah, the second one is out. I'm working on the third one right now.
No, Blight of Blackwings. That's right. Book 3 is the one that, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Books. So we're waiting for the third one there. So you've written 2 epic fantasies, brought in Al, you're creating this entirely new portion of the world. How tempting was it to, I mean, but you could have really turned this book around and made it Atticus's book, but you didn't. You kept it Al's.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. You often find authors who will take old characters and it will become a little bit too much more that character's book rather than the book that it should be about. So, I mean, how fine of a wire was it for you not to just accidentally lapse into that Atticus voice?
Oh, well, they're very different voices. Al McBarish, of course, is a 63-year-old pensioner who would love to retire but can't yet because he needs to train an apprentice. Atticus is a very different character, and he's told his story. He doesn't, want to narrate anymore. But what I was doing here is really kind of finishing off some unfinished business a little bit with Atticus, and also giving us a look at him from somebody else's perspective. That was something that I also wanted to do. So that part was a lot of fun for me. And then, of course, Atticus gets to tell a story like he used to, from his ancient past. I really enjoyed that part. And then Oberon got to tell a story. And then Buck Foy, the hobgoblin, gets to tell a story as well. So I like, when you have stories within stories, because storytelling is kind of what we're all into, really. So
absolutely. And you say it so effortless. I'm drinking scotch here, so my tongue's going to get a little tied here.
I think it was ironic that you stumbled over the word effortlessly.
Exactly. So I was just going to say, you're writing, when we're reading through Paper and Blood and all of your series, it's so natural reading it, and it's you don't get bogged down on the pages. It goes from one scene to the next. And I was listening to a cooking podcast, and they were saying that, oftentimes what we're looking for is what seems to be the simplest thing to do, like roasting a chicken, or, making, roasting a chicken's a great example because it seems so easy to do, but yet it's so hard to get perfect. And when it's perfect, it's amazing. And once you get that recipe down right, it's excellent. And that's the way I look at your writing. Your writing seems very simple in some ways. I mean, you're to the point, it moves, but to get that structure and that pacing and that tone, it's actually very difficult. Um, and I've found that through all the way through from the Iron Druid on. So I'm just sort of amazed, and I want to ask, how did you develop that? I mean, was it writing well before the Iron Druid? What was it that just, I don't know, that style?
Perhaps a little bit, but yeah, I wrote for 20 years before I actually got published. Just kept going. A lot of trial and a whole lot of error, and learning from my mistakes. But I think that Elmore Leonard had a really good quote, and I'm going to mess it up because I don't remember the exact words, so I'm paraphrasing. Mm-hmm. But he's like, whenever I read books and I come across stretches of a book that are boring, I note that, and then I just try not to write the boring bits. Mm-hmm. And so once I read that, I started, as I was reading, I'm like, okay, I would actually do this. Like sometimes I'll just skip pages. I'm like, I don't need this. And I'm going to go to the part that I like. Mm-hmm. And so I realized after a while, but wait, let me slow down and figure out, why am I wanting to skip right now? What is this that's going on that's not working for me as a reader? Is that something that's absolutely necessary to, the story? Am I skipping stuff, that's necessary or not? Is it something that, what's going on here? And if it's something that should be in there and I'm just not interested, is there a way that I can write it so that it would be interesting? Or is that something that I can entirely skip? So that's kind of what I was trying to do, or continue to try to do as a writer. I try not to bore myself, if that makes any sense. I really am writing to entertain myself, and I am entertained by lots of dialogue. I'm entertained by lots of action. And so, what do you know? That's what you get when you get one of my books. So
that's exactly it. But at the same time, you still tell a killer story, you develop excellent characters. And what I always really like about your books is you always bring us an interesting piece of mythology, whether it's Celtic or Indian, or, wherever we may go, you take us and you bring us in a little bit of that mythology from that world. And I always appreciate that. I always think that that's really interesting because I've learned from reading your books, which is part of the reason why we all read, right? And one of the reasons why we read fiction is so that we can learn without having to read the dry stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So the retellings of some of the actually old Irish mythology, when you read it, it can be pretty dry because, of course, they were not writing for modern audiences, and it can go a little slow sometimes. But if you rephrase it, put it into modern language, it's pretty good stuff. It's just, it sometimes needs a little bit more modern flair, modern language for us to appreciate it fully.
So Maggie has another really great question for you. Speaking of place, she wants to know how you learned, how you got to know Poland so well. It's her birth country, and many people don't come even close to the knowledge displayed in your book of Poland. So she was really curious what sparked that interest, and how did you get to know it?
So I met a friend of a friend who became my friends. They're Kasia Roszek, and they are from Warsaw, and they were, so I met them in Arizona, and that's how I started on the whole Polish thing. And then I actually went to Poland, and while I was there, I really loved it. It was a wonderful visit. I was both in Warsaw, and then I was in Poznan, and spent most of my time in Poznan. There was a convention there that they invited me to. And I loved the fact that there are not a lot of franchises in Poland. Most of the businesses are small businesses owned by, regular folks. So every place you go into, instead of looking the same, every place is really individual, and I love it. And I started to get into the language a little bit, just a little bit, to the point where, you know, the basic part where you start to understand it, but you can't really speak it well. But you can start to read a little bit. That's the first part of language acquisition, is reading. So I'm walking through Poznan with my guide, and I look at there's a little store with one of those little sandwich boards outside, and it's written in Polish. And I look at it and I say, hey, doesn't that say beer pudding? And he was all surprised that I could read what it said. And he said, well, yeah, it does. And I said, well, don't you think we should go inside? And it was the most amazing stuff, this plum pudding that was cooked in Guinness. And so, whoo, you know, that was a good time. And I really enjoyed going to Poland, and I hope I can go back someday. It was a lot of fun, and it's a lot cheaper to hang out there than it is like Germany or something. So there's a good exchange rate. So,
and I bet the people are really friendly there.
Well, yeah, super friendly. I mean, it's they're not used to tourists as much, the way that some of the other countries get a lot of tourists. So everybody in Poland's like, oh, how cool that you decided to come hang out with us. Right, let's go have a beer. You know, it was great.
Yeah, this year I sat in to help Barbara with a program with Lori King and her, and they were sharing slides of some places that they visited in Croatia and Slovenia. And that was really interesting as well, to see, because Eastern Europe has a really different sort of vibe to it. It definitely is still not as fully developed as, you know, especially when you get outside the bigger cities. But still, I mean, great food, cheap accommodations, and just getting away and experiencing another culture. It's a lot of fun. Speaking of other cultures and other dialects, Jennifer Murray wants to know how she was complimenting you on how you write dialect. And so I'm curious about that, because, you know, we've got the Ouija accent, we've got the Australian accent, you've got a lot of accents going on in Paper and Blood. So I'm really curious. I mean, how did you learn to write dialect so well?
It's honestly, I'm not trying to be exhaustive on how I portray it. Like, if you try to write full Scots, you know, you can do it, but it's going to take a lot of effort, not only for you as a writer, but for you as a reader, because they really have an interesting way of doing stuff if you're trying to spell everything the way it sort of sounds. So I really basically limited myself to just a few very common words that get used a lot, like, you know, you is ya, and then to is t, and things like, and instead of didn't, we have didn't. So just a few of those things gives you the general flavor, and then you put in just a you know, smattering of other fun words here and there, and bam, you've got the flavor of the language without being, you know, 100% trying to represent all of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then the same thing with Australian, you know, just a few words here and there for flavor give you the sense that this is not standard American English or standard British English, but something a little bit different. And that's all folks usually need to get things going in their head, you know, in terms of the sound. So yeah, that's what I do.
There is some debate going on also whether or not you do it to upset Luke Daniels.
Yeah, a little bit. He's the Scottish accent is actually super tough, and the Glaswegian in particular. What you mostly hear when you hear Scottish accents on television or in movies is an Edinburgh accent, or maybe something from the Highlands. You don't see a lot of Ouija accents on TV, or there's not a lot of great examples. And if you get somebody who is a really sort of a hardcore Ouija, and they can actually be incomprehensible at first. You do pick it up after a little while, but there's some vowel shifts and things like that happen. So when we first got into Glasgow, we're taking a cab from the airport to our hotel. We had to ask the cabbie over and over again what he was saying. We knew he was speaking English, but it was, we were just, our brains hadn't adjusted yet to the sounds. And so it was a little bit, we felt a little frustrated and embarrassed, you know, like, I'm so sorry, I don't mean to make you repeat yourself, but we didn't quite catch that. So, but by the end of the couple of weeks that we were staying there, we were fine. You do get accustomed to it. So, and now I like to read Scottish mysteries. Stuart Mcbride. I understand a lot of the little the slang terms that he's using in his books. I've used a few of them myself in Ink and Sigil. So it's a lot of fun. And I have a Ouija friend here who helped me out with the Scots. And then there's now Amy Kaufman, of course, helped me with the Australian bits.
Well, absolutely. Stuart Mcbride, one of my all-time favorite mystery writers. If you want to feel the cold, wet damp of Glasgow's rain going down the back of your shirt, I mean, that's the kind of writing he has. I mean, it's just really excellent. And his main character is really interesting. They're not for the faint of heart, though. They're pretty dark.
Yeah.
And so is Denise Mina. Have you read her yet?
No.
Glaswegian?
Yeah, I haven't read Denise Mina yet. So thank you for the recommendation.
Absolutely. When she's come here, she has a very strong Ouija accent, and she has to try to tone it down a little bit for when she's speaking in a group, because if she goes full Ouija on you, it throws some of our people for a loop. It's hard to pick up right away. But they do tend to have a really dry sense of humor, which I really enjoy. And a lot of their books are pretty darn bleak, where you could have gone bleak with Paper and Blood, but that's not really your style, is it?
No, I guess it's not. I'm trying to keep things serious with the epic fantasy, but some humor leaks in every so often. I find that there's darkness in my stuff too. I like to leaven it with a little, or sweeten it with some humor, so that the spoonful of sugar makes the tragedy go down, that kind of thing. So
absolutely, and it hits harder when it does. And I don't feel like I need a Xanax after reading one of your books, like watching The Red Wedding on Game of Thrones, right? You're just like, I'm just shell shocked. Yeah. In terms of the series and starting off, because this is now essentially book 11, I believe, in the universe, right? Or book 13?
Oh gosh, it would be book 12.
Book 12, okay. Sorry, my count was a little off.
No worries.
In terms of your series, I mean, what was the inspiration? What made it finally click for you? Iron Druid, that's where I'm gonna go. And then once Iron Druid's story was done, Al's story needs to be told.
Well, yeah, after I finished the Iron Druid, I was wondering if there was a lot of different directions I could go. If I wanted to spin off things in the Iron Druid world, there were the werewolves, and there's the witches, and there's, the Owen's Grove of young druids coming up and all that kind of stuff. So there's a bunch of different things I could have done, but the one that really called to me was this character who's super different from Atticus, Al McVarish, who doesn't have superpowers. He's not bound to the earth, but he could use ink and sigil magic to access a small part of druidic magic for a temporary, crucial moment. So I really liked what he was doing and where he was at in his life and what he's trying to achieve now, versus what Atticus was doing. I just liked that it was different, but also still in the same world, so I can bring in the characters that we've met in the Iron Druid Chronicles whenever I wanted to. And so we've met Coriander, the Herald Extraordinary. He keeps coming on back. And I've developed some more parts of the Fey realms, through Ink and Sigil. We've got pixies now and the hobgoblins and what they're up to. And it's a lot of fun.
I love Gladys, who's seen some shite.
Yeah.
I gotta say, she is one of my favorite characters you've written. I think we've all known that lady that just doesn't take any gruff, and that's just sort of what I picture Gladys. I just thinking about some of the stuff that happens in Paper and Blood that she does is just cracking me up, but I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, so I'm in Canada now, and I'm living next door to a Nova Scotian, and her accent is delightful. And she's just no nonsense, man. She's wonderful. So there's a little bit of her and Gladys, who has seen some, gosh, that gets you after a while, doesn't it? Gladys, who has seen some shite. So I had a great time with her and building up who she was, and kind of, revealing a little bit at the end there about her. So I hope folks dig it. I actually have a couple of people on Instagram who don't even do anything. They don't say anything to me anymore except hashtag her name. Like, it doesn't matter what I post. I could here, here's a picture of an apple, and they will just reply hashtag Gladys, who has seen some shite. And so, yeah, she's obviously struck a chord with some folks, and I'm so glad.
Yeah, no, I think she's become a classic. I want to see more of her now, Kevin. And I want to see her kick some ass. Let's just say that.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's coming. So
excellent. So, here you are living in Phoenix. You're working a day job, you're teaching, and along comes, the Iron Druid, and this just sort of catapults your career and changes your career. Was it scary? Were you ready to take that jump and that leap into being a full-time writer?
Yeah, it was a little bit scary, but also really, I was really grateful for it, because this was happening around the time of the big housing market, crumble, 2008,
Yeah.
So when that happened, there was a lot of squeezing of state budgets, if you might recall.
Yeah.
And that means that the squeezing of the state budget means, we're going to try to balance our budget on the backs of teachers. I was teaching English at the time. So what was happening was we got our pay frozen for 3 years. And at the same time, they were increasing our retirement contributions and our insurance. So the effect was, here's the same salary for 3 years. There's no cost of living increase, but yet we're taking more money out. So I was essentially taking a pay cut for 3 years. And I was like, this is rough. I wasn't being paid a lot anyway as a teacher in Arizona, and now you're making it tougher. So it was a blessing to be able to not have to teach anymore, because of Atticus and Oberon and the folks who decided that they liked the stories. I'm very grateful. Yeah.
It was exciting. I mean, it's always nerve-wracking, because now you have a book a year to come out with, depending on your publisher. Now you've got Del Rey, and you've got a really wonderful publisher over there at Del Rey, and a great editor. They're a great house to work for. So you got the best of everything with this, but it did take a lot of work for you to do. And the first 3 books were kind of on spec how they would do.
Yeah, that's true. I wrote the first 3 books, and then they basically released them all together in 2011. So we had no idea how they were going to do. No clue. So, because here's 3 books. What if nobody even likes the first one? Well, they're certainly not going to buy the second 2 if they don't like the first one. It was a big gamble to release them all at once. But fortunately, folks decided they liked it. And I'm super grateful, because then, because folks bought it, they let me write some more. So thank you.
Yeah. And I still remember that Sunday that I was coming in working the front of the counter. I was at that Sunday, and you came on in, and I just finished Hounded, because one of our customers came in and said, you've got to read this book. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's right up your alley, because I love urban fantasy. I think that it ties the best of both worlds. It ties my love of fantasy, and it ties my love of mysteries, and it puts them together in this beautiful package. So I loved it. And in you came, and you're like, hey, I'm looking for somebody to be able to mail out our books. And we're like, yes. I'm like, I'll work it out with Barbara, our store owner. And, we've had a relationship ever since. And it's been sort of exciting to see your career grow. I mean, we're sad to have seen you leave Arizona, but at the same time, it's exciting for you because you get to grow and you get to see different things and you get to do different things. And I think that, you know, I only see great things, more to come and bigger and better stories. You've got years and years of entertaining us now, Kevin. You get to be here.
Hopefully. Hey, I'll be there in December, by the way. I'm going to come down and visit my mom, you know, as long as they open the border to Canadians again. And I will come on down and visit my mom. And while I'm there, come by and say hi to you all if it's okay. And maybe we could do an event of some kind. We'll have to see.
I know, and our favorite place, Rilla is sadly no longer. And Skeptical Chemist just closed as well. Two of the Irish and Scottish, you know, two Irish bars there have unfortunately closed here in Phoenix. But we've got to do something. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
It'd be great.
Maggie did say that Gladys is my soulmate, her soulmate. So again, you got more Gladys fans. Right on, Maggie. Lee Whiteside asks, you hinted there might be some TV options in the works.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can talk about in terms of television?
Sure. Keep in mind that this is a maybe. It's not a for sure.
Yeah.
But it's been under option for almost 3 years now. And that's the reason I haven't really made a gigantic announcement about it or anything like that is because, of course, it's just an option. Nothing is totally in the works. But at this point, they've progressed to the point where they're actually writing a pilot script. So if I believe it's TNT that's interested in this, and so if TNT says go ahead and produce the pilot, then there will be a show. But we don't know if they're going to say yes or not. We have no idea what it's going to be like. So nothing is set in stone, but at least we are further along the road than we were, you know, before, because Warner Brothers Studios is behind it and now TNT is interested. So we're actually writing a pilot script. So we'll see how it goes.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So it could happen or it could not. We just, you know, but at least there's a tiny bit, you know, the odds are slightly more in our favor than they were at any point in the past. So
it seems like TNT and some of these cable networks support their shows a little bit better than others. And so, you know, even if it has, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, more people will be exposed to Atticus and Oberon, and that it'll get the chance to tell its story as well, because there's nothing more frustrating than being involved in a television series, especially one that's fantasy based or urban fantasy, and you only get one season of it because it's not enough. You know, I'm like, you got to work out a few of those kinks before it becomes really, really good. I usually think it takes a couple seasons for urban fantasy to really click. And some other people are agreeing with me, just not sci-fi. I wasn't going to call them out, but Sean, you are absolutely 100% correct. They frustrate me as well. People are curious on how they would handle Oberon, but I don't know if you could really answer that. More importantly, you might be able to tell us a little bit about how Luke Daniels invented Oberon. Were you involved in that?
Well, no, I wasn't actually. Luke does all his own stuff. In fact, the way he does the voices is nothing like what they sound like in my head. And that's fine. That's totally cool. I love it because his delivery is so good. Even though I've written the jokes, when I listen to the audiobooks, I'm still laughing because of his delivery. So he turns in a performance that's unexpected and delightful. So yeah, I don't coach him on how somebody should sound. The only thing that I would ever suggest is, you know, how do we pronounce this certain word or this certain name, and that's it. But how that person sounds, things like that, that's all up to him, because he knows what he can do with his voice and I don't. So I just get to enjoy the product at the end. So how he came up with Oberon, no idea. I just know that I enjoy it. One of the things that's really amusing though is if you ever get to see him live, he's done a couple of appearances with me. I think once down in Atlanta, or maybe it was Texas. He happened to be in Texas at the time that I was doing a play. And then he joined me and Delilah S. Dawson in Chicago. And when he does a voice, when he's reading, he switches the voices on the fly. He's not like just doing one person's voice and then cutting and then switching to another one. He actually reads all that stuff, in real time and switches as he goes. It's amazing to watch.
He was here with you for one book, and that was really cool. You and him together really made everybody's night. I remember that. I remember one kid, he did actually his voicemail for him.
Yeah, I did a voicemail and yeah, great.
So
it was fun.
I mean, it really was. And it's those sorts of memories that as an author, do you miss not being able to do on tour, where you're able to get and see people and just learn about them?
Yeah, I miss doing events, and I hope I'll get to do them again sometime. I'm not super anxious to do like a Comic-Con convention kind of thing, because I think that would be too many people. a little bit scared at this point, a little bit shell shocked. I don't want to be around that many folks, but a few people that you have at the store, we could do that. That's totally cool. I hope I get to do that again, because I love seeing folks, you sometimes get these really delightful surprises. And right now I'm enjoying fan art. People are drawing the chimeras that are in Paper and Blood. There's the turtle, dragon, spider, and the eagle bulls and stuff like that. And I'm starting to see the artwork for it. And I'm like, this is awesome. I love this. So
now in the back, you think you're Canadian D&D crew. So I've got to say, are you playing an epic game? And if you are you Dungeon Master, or are you just a player?
Yeah, I'm a player. I basically play either a dwarf or sometimes a ranger. I have a good time with that. There's a couple of different things. We're also doing a superhero game where I'm a fellow who can make magical potions. Basically, if it's liquid, I can change the liquid into almost anything. Water into wine is just one really fantastic trick, but there's a lot of stuff you could do with that. But I'm pretty squishy. If something hits me, I'm not going to be able to handle it very well. So it's a really fun character to play. I'm having a good time with the role playing stuff. Oh, and I should mention, if it's okay, Hero Forge minis. They just came out with a custom Atticus O'Sullivan tabletop miniature.
Oh, that's so cool.
So when you look at it, there's I posted this on my Instagram today. If you guys want to go to my Instagram, I'm just at Kevin Hearne, and the link that's in my profile will take you to the mini. And you'll notice when you see it that he doesn't have the tattoos on his arms, because that's a digital representation of the mini, but it will get painted on. Now, who paints it? That's a different question. It can be you, because they will just send you the model and you can paint it yourself however you like. Or you can get somebody who's kind of pro at it to do it for you, which is what I'm going to do. And it's a friend of mine from Arizona. His name's Alan O'Brien. He's an award-winning miniature painter, and he's going to get the tattoos and everything all perfect on this miniature. And that little tool that they have to design your own character, you could design a Granuaile or a Leif Helgerson or whatever you want. I love that. It kind of makes me want to create like an Iron Druid module for D&D, like a one-shot adventure or something like that, so that people could play it if they like.
Wouldn't that be fun? Or if you see somebody podcast I really enjoy Critical Role. That's one of my favorite podcasts I'll put on during the day, and 4 hours of people just riffing and storytelling and having a good time. That would be great, though, in the Iron Druid and Paper and Ink and Sigil series. Yeah. So I think that would be really cool. Even the Seven Kennings would be a really cool place to set this. Brian Tenefa says Kevin should work with a game company to make a tabletop RPG in the Iron Druid world. Mitch is really curious about the status on the Seven Kennings book. So we've gone through two of them. Where's number 3? What's it looking like at the moment?
It's called A Curse of Krakens, and I am currently at work on it. It's going to be a big boy. It's long, and I have a ways to go. So they're like twice as long. Like these epic fantasies are twice as long as the urban fantasies are. So it's like I'm writing, 2 books. And so it takes me about 6 months to write, an urban fantasy. So it's going to be, a year for me to write an epic fantasy. So I've made some good progress on it, but I've got a ways to go. And I will let you guys know as soon as I have finished it and they give me a publication date. But don't worry, I'm not going to stop working on it. I'm going to get it done. And there's 2 maps to go with it too, 2 brand new maps that I'm very psyched about. So.
Because you draw the maps, right? You create them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my favorite things about that you did with Delilah in the No Country for Old Gnomes, that the Pell series is that you drew and named the entire map. And if I just need a good laugh, like I've had a hard day, I actually open up the map and go through it, and I just giggle like a 12-year-old. I love it. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, you have to love that the elves live in the morning wood. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a good time. Yeah, that is one of my favorite things. That map is one of my favorite things I've ever done. And so for all of you who are not familiar, the Tales of Pell, there's 3 books that I wrote with Delilah, and they're all set in the same world, but you can read them in any order. It doesn't matter. They all use that same map though. Okay. So there's Kill the Farm Boy, No Country for Old Gnomes, and The Princess Beard. And again, you can read them any order you want. So you did.
Yeah. Was it a challenge co-writing with somebody at first, or was it?
I did not find it to be a challenge. I found it to be a complete joy. Delilah is hilarious, and she cracks me up. And we were already friends beforehand. We already had a good relationship, and we were basically just sort of entertaining each other, and also not being possessive of any characters. Like, she would make up a character, and then I wound up being the one who wrote it first. That Fia, the first chapter in Kill the Farm Boy, where Fia is climbing the tower and all that, that was me writing it, but that character was designed by Delilah. And then the same thing with the Dark Lord Toby. The Dark Lord Toby, I made up, who he was, but Delilah wound up writing his first chapter. So we didn't have any ownership of characters. We just kind of traded back and forth, and it turned out to be a blast. It was like a game of improv, So yeah, if you guys like humorous fantasy, we poke loving fun at epic fantasy tropes. Check out the Tales of Pell.
Yeah, I mean, that farm boy, is a pesky sort of trope that I love and I loathe at the same time.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You love the idea of somebody who's coming from nothing, a humble background, and becomes the king. I mean, we get a little bit of it with Arthurian legend. We get it from, but it's been done to death, right? So.
Heck, it was Star Wars, right? I mean, Luke Skywalker is your farm boy who comes up and topples the Empire, right? It's been done over and over again. And we just thought, well, what if we killed that guy? Then what? Maybe because the thing is that often the farm boy is he's a white guy, and what if we got rid of the white guy, then let all of the characters who are usually side characters come to the fore and have their own seriously legit adventures and character arcs and growth and stuff like that. And so we really enjoyed that experience. It was a lot of fun.
That's so cool. That is so cool. Kevin, I do have to ask, is there a different sort of the brain that you're working on when you're working on Kennings versus either humorous fantasy or urban fantasy? Is there just like a different sort of switch with you in terms of writing?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very different headspace. When I'm doing the 7 Kenning stuff, I'm telling an epic fantasy from 12 different first-person points of view, which is, I know, it doesn't get done a lot, if at all. So since I'm writing all of these different voices, I have to stay in a certain headspace for a while, and I write each character, I write their whole story arc at a time so that I'm not head hopping, because they have to keep their own language internally consistent. So otherwise they wind up sounding like each other, and I don't want them to sound like each other, and I don't want them to sound like me. So I really have to be careful about what language I'm using, and sticking with one character for a while as I go. So that's kind of how I approach it. And it's a different experience for sure, being in those headspaces than being in an urban fantasy headspace where we're dealing with the modern world here that we're all familiar with, instead of a second world that I've imagined.
Is it refreshing though? I mean, to be able to write something different and be able to write something different?
It is. I enjoy the challenge. It keeps things fresh for me. It's great.
I wonder about certain writers like Sue Grafton, who we absolutely loved, and she sometimes loved but sometimes loathed Kinsey Malone because of the fact that she was writing, 28 books in an alphabet series.
Yeah.
And she got to Y, and then unfortunately she passed. And we'll never have Z.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where you wonder if your creativity process gets a little stymied just dealing with the same characters over and over and over again. Same with Conan Doyle, who he hated Sherlock Holmes by the end, and that's why he killed him. And I would never want you to get tired of these characters. I hope what you do is do what you've done in this series and just tell a different part, different perspective within the same world to give us that same loving feel, but to have these projects that also revitalize you and allow you to stretch your other storytelling muscles, because the Kennings books are very serious and they've got a big gravitas and they're more literary in a sense, and I don't want to, please don't take that the wrong way, but they're just denser
right
than the Ink and Sigil series. And I think that's really cool. I think that that's something very few authors can do.
Yeah, thank you. I'm having a great time with it, and I love being able to explore new characters like Buck Foy and Gladys, who was seen from Shite.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Boy, no, but
well, Buck Foy as a character, he has issues, right? And I really enjoy that about him. Yes, he's comic relief, but he's actually got a lot of stuff that he's dealing with.
Yeah.
He feels very insecure. He doesn't realize. He's got a desire to be loved. He wants to be a legend, right? So he's got some issues that he's got to deal with and really confront. And so far, he's not doing it. But hopefully, he will get to that soon.
Maggie's curious. She says, "Which character do you feel is the most reflective of yourself?"
Oh my gosh!
Curious.
Yeah, I don't really think that. Every character might have a tiny bit of me in there, but I don't. There's nobody who's like, well, here's a 50-year-old, English major running around, shaving his head. There's nothing like that. There's really not me in there. I'm just a tiny bit of everything. Al and his love for inks and paper. I love ink and paper. There you go. But and then I also like what Buck Foy likes a good whiskey and he likes mischief. I don't really perform heists, but I think about them a lot. So wouldn't it be cool to have a heist? So yeah, there's a little bit of me in everybody, but yeah, nothing is really based on me.
Now that you live in a similar area to one of our favorite authors, Owen Laukkanen, you guys are going to have to perform the great maple syrup heist of 2022.
Yeah.
Just saying, Kevin.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I did a heist, actually. I performed a heist with Nicholas Eames. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's an epic fantasy author. Mm-hmm. And we did a little heist. He wore a hockey mask and I wore a luchador mask. And I've got photos. I got proof. And we had a good time with that. It was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Were you high on salsa at the time?
I was not high on salsa at the time. I was high on milk and bacon donuts. Yeah.
Now, one of the things I got to say is, have you been able to find as good of salsa up there as some of your favorite taco shops down here?
Yeah, it's tough yeah, I can't, the Mexican food thing is, I've just now, like in the past 2 weeks, finally found a good taco shop. Some folks that, hey, they immigrated from the Southwest and they're up here now. They know what they're doing. So it's great to find that. But of course, when I was in Colorado, I lived there for 3 years, and we used to be able to go get fire roasted chilies in October, like the fresh fire roasted stuff. Yeah. It was amazing. So up here, I can't even get whole chilies. So, like you can buy cans of whole green chilies. Up here, you get diced or nothing. You can't even buy certain food. So it's rough in that regard.
Although I've got a real brief story to tell. I grew up in Colorado and I grew up in Denver, and so for birthday parties, inevitably you'd have at least one or two a year at Casa Bonita.
Yeah.
And Casa Bonita, for those of you who aren't familiar with, is a place that they frequent or reference regularly on South Park. And it's got it was not good, at least at the time. Good Mexican food, but as kids you didn't notice that. Like the adults, you never really saw them eat. They just be drinking or something else. And then this year they closed, and I guess the creators from South Park are now going to reopen Casa Bonita, but they're going to improve the menu.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, I mean, there's bad Mexican food wherever you go, but yes. I'm trying to think of your favorite taco place down here. It was Taco
Grill. The Taco Grill.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
know if it's still open or not.
We'll have to take a look. I was going to say, do you still have the key? Because they actually gave you a special taco key.
Yeah, I still have it. It's on my key ring. I love that thing.
So Cindy wants to know if you have any tattoos yourself.
I don't. Sorry.
How did tattoos become such an important part of the story?
I was trying to figure a way to bind them to the earth in a ritual sort of way. And so in the 5th book, they are bound to the earth in a very sort of long ritual where Gaia is kind of channeling herself through an actual living thorn bush. So, I mean, everything is, they're actually being bound to the earth by something that's still living in the earth that's connected directly to Gaia. So it's like, it's a quite an involved process. And so that's the way how do you make that connection? And that was the way I figured they could do it. There's blood involved. There's, there's actual, some sort of, I don't want to say intercourse, but that's what the word that popped into my head, between the earth and the human at that point. And then, they're bound together forever. So that's kind of where it came from. I hope that makes some sort of sense.
So some good news. Sean's letting us know that Taco Guild still is around.
Yes.
So that's great news.
Yeah.
And Brian, actually, Karen wants to know who went into designing the tattoos. Did you design the tattoos, or did you see a tattoo artist to do it?
Yeah, I hired a fella. His name is Phil Balsman, and he was able to work with me on getting the tattoos done. And we only did the arm and the arm stuff and the forearm and the hand, because I figured that was what people might like for cosplay. Every so often I will get people saying, well, where's the rest of it? I want the whole body. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't do that. That was so, it's very involved to do that much design work. So I don't have the designs for the rest of the full body, but the arm stuff is all available on my website under goodies. So.
Yeah, and one of the cool things is that, and one of the things I missed was when we're doing these events with you in person, and people will come in showing you,
they got
their Atticus work.
Yeah, there's some great stuff out there, and of course you can take those what's available on my website. You could take those designs as a jumping off point and go, take it to your tattoo artist, and then use it as inspiration for whatever you want. Do different animals, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. That is so neat. Yeah. Two final questions here, Kevin. So, sure. Brian was curious how Kevin came up for Al to talk via text to speech. And did that communication method create any issues for you in writing? And the other question is, what are you, so we know what you're working on next. Do you have any collaborations in the future? And what are you currently reading?
Okay. You might have to remind me of some of that, but I'm going to go with the part about the text to speech thing. There's a lot of folks who, for one reason or another, there's a lot of different causes, but they have very good reasons to use those apps. They have a disability of some sort, and they need to use those apps to, communicate to folks. And there are varying levels of quality that are available out there, and for the software. And the stuff that's on the phone that you can get on a mobile app is usually pretty low quality, but of course it winds up actually getting used a lot because you got to get out in the world and talk to folks. There are other, like you could use like sort of like an iPad based kind of a situation and do that as well. But there's a lot of different options, but there's one particular company, it's based in Scotland, that actually has a Scottish accent built in. It's an Edinburgh accent. It's very well done. When I listen to that and the quality that's on there, it's light years ahead of what you get for free on a mobile app. If you want the stuff that actually sounds really well done, then you got to pay for it. But the people who need it and use it every day, they'll pay for it because it's part of what makes their life better. So I basically am exploring in a tiny way some of the issues revolving around disability and accessibility in our culture. How Al is not really disabled so much as cursed. He can speak, but he would just suffer dire consequences down the road if he continued to do so. So yeah, he uses this app and learns what it's like for folks who have to use it, and then of course Atticus is also dealing with a disability issue as well. So that's one little thing that I'm exploring out of several things that I explore in this particular series.
That's so awesome.
What are the other questions? I'm sorry.
I know. I just threw them on you. I'm like, here, let me dump them all on you, Kevin. Remember.
Yeah.
What is so are you working on any further collaborations?
Possibly. Yeah, I've got I don't want to say too much yet because nothing is certain at the moment, but I have two different possible collaborations going on in the short term. I've got a Zoom meeting actually on Tuesday with some folks. So we'll see. I'll announce when I have something to announce. And then let's see, I have you have one more. What am I reading right now? Is that what?
Yeah, you usually post what you're reading, so I'm just curious to the audience, anything that you're reading that you're loving that you want to shout out.
Yeah, well, I did mention that I was reading Stuart McBride's Scottish noir mysteries. I've really been enjoying
Logan McRae. That's
Logan McRae. Yep. Yeah. There's another one too. He's got another hero, fewer books, but he's also very good. And then there's I've been enjoying middle grade books recently. Honestly, they're for a couple of reasons. One is that they're shorter, and so you get through them pretty quick. so I don't find that I have as much time to read as I used to. So I can read middle grade stories or YA stories a little bit faster because they're a little bit shorter, but also they're really, really good stories. So Delilah came out with one this week called Mine, and I'm enjoying the heck out of it. There's a dog named Buddy, and I'm really rooting for him, and a girl named Lily who has to move from Colorado to Florida, and she's in this janky house, and it's haunted as heck. And I'm into, oh my gosh, Lily is a cinnamon roll and I don't want anything to happen to her, but I'm also really curious about this ghost girl who is haunting her and what happened to her and everything. So I'm super into it because Delilah is an amazing storyteller. And so I don't think adults should be hesitant to buy some of these really fun stories. Read them first and then give them to a kid and say, hey, check this out. So I'm reading that one, Bump by Matt Wallace, which is about a girl who wants to be a professional wrestler. And Weird Kid, I really recommend this to all y'all in Arizona because it's set in Arizona. It's by Greg Van Eekhout. And the kid who's weird has a dog, also awesome. Right? I'm always into the dog stories, right? But the weird kid is weird because he's an alien and he's trying to make sure nobody finds that out. But he can't seem to really nail what it is like to be a normal human. So yeah, a lot of feelings there on the metaphorical level about what it is to be a weird kid growing up. So I love it. And so I'm into all of that stuff right now. I'm also, I always like to recommend these days, The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart and The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex Harrow. And that's ALIXHARROW. Very good stuff.
We just actually did that one not too long ago for our Sci Friday book club. Kind of a shout out for those of you who might be into science fiction and fantasy. It's a combined book club, so we do both in person and in Zoom. So you get to meet the people who are coming physically into the store along with those who can't. And we've got people all around the United States who join us via Zoom. So it's sort of neat. So if you guys ever want to pop in, email me, pat@poisonpen.com. I'll send you the Zoom link. And that's all you really need to do to sign up. And I never, I don't know if you ever have done book clubs, Kevin, but we all get really busy. And I hate for book clubs to make people feel like they're going into like a confessional, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's terrible when you're like, I didn't read the book because, you know, and I'm like, you never have to worry about that. Life sometimes gets really busy and you don't have time to read the book that month. People always have something to add, you know, regardless of whether or not they read the book or not, because life, you know, we've got life experience. So anyways, I try to make it as low intensity as possible. And every now and again, we have a good time, like we just did The Witcher. And so they could either read the book, play the video game, or watch the television show.
Okay.
You know, why not do all three of those? So I think we're kind of fun. We're kind of a unique book club. So, anyways, Alex Harrow's 10,000 Doors of January, that's where I digressed. We just recently read that. That was a really great book.
Yeah.
It was really an awesome one. But I've got to say, the book of the month for me, hands down, Kevin, your book, Paper and Sigil. This has just made my week. And I've got to say that 2020, I reread Harry Potter, Iron Druid, and Lord of the Rings. Those were the three books I had to read in 2020 lockdown because I needed some comfort. And I appreciate the many hours that you have given us in pleasure and enjoyment. And I just can't wish you more than enough success on this book. Whether you buy it through us here at the Poison Pen or you buy it elsewhere, please buy a book, support Kevin, make sure that he gets the super yacht he deserves.
Super yacht. That's actually a funny joke. I mean, I keep talking to Kimberly about I would never ever buy a boat. I don't get the boat thing. I don't know why I would do that, but yeah, I love if I want to go out on the water, I will rent one. But just for a day. I don't want to own a boat. There's so much to that. Oh my goodness. But anyway, thank you so kindly. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Kevin.
I hope you guys will buy from the Poison Pen. They will ship anywhere in the world, and you will get a signed book plate with it. And they're super supportive of me. And like I said, I will be in Arizona to hopefully visit you guys in December. And we'll see if we can maybe talk a little bit and figure out an event if possible around that time. Even if we don't have an event, maybe I could just sign a whole bunch of books, you know, in person, so you have signed books to send out to people instead of just book plates.
It'd be nice. It'd be really nice. But more importantly, it's to see you and make sure that the family's healthy and happy. Yeah. You get to see your mom. That's really important.
Yeah.
This is Hearne. I know she's still on. Kevin, I hope you have a wonderful night. And everybody on Facebook, thank you very much, because Kevin and I wouldn't be here talking about his book if it weren't for all of you. You're really the most important part of all of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Have a wonderful night, Kevin, and we'll see you soon.
You too. Take care. We'll see you around. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, guys.